dad and all that. Well, now the kids are grown and moved on, so it's kind of forced me to go back to writing the way I used to before I had kids, and it's been a lot of fun.
Right.
Exploring this again. The show I'm bringing in there, I talk a lot about, there's a big chunk of it talking about my experience on Dancing with the Stars, which was just so bizarre, and I never saw that coming.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you something. It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life.
Oh, I can imagine.
I figured out when I finally got eliminated in the finals that I had danced 6 hours a day, 7 days a week for 13 weeks.
Right.
And I don't do anything that much.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's a lot of time to do the things that you love, and then you're turning around doing something you've never really done before, right?
I don't play golf that much.
Right.
But it was what was amazing was that I lost like 30 pounds. Now, the bad side is I tore my groin, I popped my hamstring, and I got to have my knee replaced in December. But the sick part is, if they called me today and said we'd like to have you on tomorrow, I'd be there. It was so much fun.
Right. Well, they do those best of or greatest hits, whatever they call them, right? Every so often they bring back people.
They do.
Yeah.
But you know what's funny is I think, and I say this in the show that, and it sounds like whining, but it's not. Is the show's gotten away from what it originally was, which was you take celebrities who did not know how to ballroom dance and you teach them.
Right.
Well, now, I mean, good Lord, they had the ice dancing gold Olympia.
Sure, yeah.
You know, they're dancing on ice.
Right.
Come on wood, it's like having training wheels. So, but we talk a lot about that, and then we talk about just to get, the fact of getting older and the aches and pains, and just general life stuff, and kind of delve into my family a little bit more. It's one of those shows that I find sometimes they go, okay, we need you to do 90 minutes, and you look down your watch, you go, all right, I got 15 more minutes. This show is like, oh, there was 90 minutes. It was like,
right.
Because I'm having so much fun.
Right. Well, you kind of started in on some of the questions I'm going to ask you anyway, so we'll just keep going. Does that work?
Cool.
All right. Well, one of the things I was going to ask you talked a little bit about the routine. This is, I guess, your stop at Roanoke here that's coming up that we're on. That'll be the fourth show in the run. How much does the routine change from show 1 to show 4 or something like that? I mean, I'm assuming you're always tweaking it, right?
It's a great question. You're always tweaking stuff, but generally right now, I know the show I'm doing, and because it's a live performance, anything can happen. But generally, it stays about the same, the main structure of it. But I may come, I may be doing something and a joke will hit me, and I go, oh, I'll try that.
Right.
And I've always been one of those guys, kind of an idiot in the sense, like my buddy who's coming in, Gary Brightwell, who opens for me. Sometimes I'll have an idea for a joke, and because. And the thing is weird is at the level I'm at now, like when I was in the clubs, I could work on material left and right.
Right.
Because the clubs, they didn't care. But when people are paying a bigger ticket price, they don't want to see if they're screwing around.
Sure.
But Gary will say, "Why don't you try this joke?" And he says, "You always amaze me." He says, "I'll go out and that's the first joke I try. I don't warm up the crowd. I just try that first because I figure it's got to stand on its own at some point.
Right.
So why not now?" And sometimes that's where some of the funniest stuff comes out of is just. Because I'll start riffing on an idea, and then the next thing you know, it's turned into a 10-minute bit.
Right. One of the things that I think you're great at is that timing, and I know all you comics talk about it. But is that something that you're conscious of? Do you think about your timing? Do you practice that, or is that just natural? Is that just how you talk and it just works out?
There's really no way to practice it. It's funny because I get comedians that'll ask me that, or they'll ask me about how do I write a catchphrase.
Right.
I go, well, you don't write it. The audience determines. I mean, I didn't know "Here's Your Sign" was going to be what people hooked into, and that was what they would remember me by. But I just think it's a natural thing, the timing thing. I just love. I love what I do. First off, so that helps a lot because it's just there's no much. You're out making people laugh. I mean, it's like, golly, it doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah. And
I think the other thing, and I try to tell young comedians this, is that if you really want to work, if you really love doing stand-up, and I like, myself, I'd love to have a career like Andy Griffith or Bill Cosby or, Bob Newhart, for a long time. And I think that the key to that is that you have to stay relatable and you have to be clean. Because I think everybody, like, listen, I love a great dirty joke. I'm no prude here. But I don't want to take my wife and sit through an hour and a half of some filthy show, even though I might be laughing. No, she'll be uncomfortable.
Right.
So I just kind of found that, and listen, I'm not Disney on Ice. I'm not trying to sell that. But I don't swear, and I've got an age range audience from 90 to 19. It's because even the older people they love it because as I tell these guys, you can talk about whatever you want as long as you do it in a clean way.
Right. You mentioned some of those guys like Bill Cosby and Newhart. Is it interesting now that you're kind of coming full circle like they did, to where you started as a comedian, you hustled, you worked, you made it on TV, you made some money, and now you're back out on the road again doing a bunch of dates? I mean, I know you got 4 in September, I think 9 or 10 in October, same thing in November. Is that sort of the process you like of, hey, let me go back out and see if I still have it on the road?
Well, I always tease people. I've been on tour since 1982.
Right.
But yeah, the thing that's weirder is to think that now I'm one of the older comedians. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's a nice ego boost to know that you can still go out and sell some tickets and make people laugh. And but I didn't plan it that way. It's like I'm trying to get another show now. In fact, I've got it up on my fan face page, a little teaser of it, and I tell people to go on there and like it because I guess I'm having to. This is what's sad. I'm having to adjust now to this new age of television and stuff, where you put something up on the social media, and then all of a sudden television goes, "Oh, we like that."
Right.
In the old days, it used to be like, "Let's create something for you." It's like, well,
yeah.
You create everything, and then we'll put it on our network.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm adjusting to becoming the one of the older comedians out there now, touring, and which is sad, but. It's still fun, I still love this. Every job has its downside, and mine's the traveling. If I could do that Bewitched thing where you just tweak your nose, it'd be a perfect job.
Well, you mentioned the social media. Right before the interview, I was watching the Joan Rivers in bed thing that you did on her internet. Her internet web series that she had. I think it was about a year ago today, and I know you crossed paths with her more than once. She mentioned in the show that she thinks she gave you your first award way back in the late '80s there, or something like that. Talk about her.
I'm looking at
the
picture of it right now of her handing me that award. Yeah, it was one of those things that she crossed my path several times, even though we never really hung out. We weren't like buddies.
Sure.
But Joan, love her or hate her, was really, if you think about it, the only female comedian that really made it to the top and stayed there for a long time.
Yeah.
And she was always very sweet to me, even in her, her kind of weird, caustic way. But it was weird. Her and Robin, both of them. I remember as a young comedian when I was working as the MC at a club in Dallas. Came through, and I got to give him a ride back to his hotel, which was like 40 minutes away. So it was like I got to yak with him. And as a young comedian, I'm talking to Mork.
Right.
It was like he was at the top of his game, and and I asked the questions. I said, "What's it like out on the road? What what can I expect?" And this, and they were both of them were very, very forthcoming, and like Robin, you had to kind of pick it out of the jokes. But it was. They both said you're going to enjoy it. They said it's a great job, and it must be because I don't consider it a job. It's just a really fun thing I do.
Yeah, is that a couple more questions and then we'll let you go. Is that a trait among comedians? Because I know you told Joan in the web series, comedians were all kind of loners, but it does seem like, when you hear these stories like you're telling, comedians are always picking each other's brains. Not necessarily about a new bit or a joke, but just hey, did you work this club? What did you think about this, etc. You guys are always trying to grill each other for intel, which is not a bad thing, obviously.
No, and I think the reason for that is because we have no other outlet. I can't walk up to a fan and go, "Hey, what'd you think of Uncle Joe's Comedy Hut?"
Right?
Guy nice. So you talk to the people that have been there,
right?
And but in that sense, and we are, and it's funny when I say that to her because it really is. Now I have an opening act that travels with me and stuff, but overall, you're on your own. It's like you fly there by yourself. You get in a car with somebody you don't know from the club that takes you to this condo that God knows who stayed in it before you did, and you do the show. And I always say that's why I think in comedy that's why you see a lot of drug use and alcohol abuse. It's because you're on stage with like there at Roanoke. I'll be on stage with 1,500 to 2,000 new best friends.
Right.
And then the show's over, and they all go home.
Right.
And you're there in a hotel by yourself, staring at ESPN.
Exactly.
Like, so, but there. While we're loners, there is a very much a camaraderie, whether they will admit it or not, amongst comics, because we're all out doing the same thing.
Right. Well, we're a country station, Bill, so I got to ask you about "Here's Your Sign" because obviously, country music in the late '90s very affected by that song, and obviously the Jeff Foxworthy stuff too. But talk about "Here's Your Sign" just a little bit.
Well, "Here's Your Sign," like I said earlier, I didn't know that to be the bit that people would love, and it's actually changed over the years. It used to when I first started it. I said that I thought stupid people should be slapped. And then one day my wife said, well, you don't really look like someone who walks around slapping people. So I was in Omaha, Nebraska at the Funny Bone Comedy Club, and you were there for 6 days, so you had a chance to work on a bit. And I came up with this idea of a sign that just said, I'm stupid. And in fact, I used to sell them for $1 a piece after the show. And then my wife finally said, you got to stop selling the signs. And I said, why? Because I'd come home with $200 or $300 in ones.
Right.
She goes, everybody at the bank thinks I'm a topless dancer. So but, the country market really embraced it and took me in. It was the #1 song for 8 weeks in a row. And it was funny because when I was doing my first album, all I'd seen was Foxworthy, and he just exploded.
Yeah.
And so we had the same manager, and he goes, all right, we're going to put out an album. So I was like, all right, here it goes. The roller coaster ride is starting. And the album came out, and the first week it sold 100 copies across the country. That was like it's less than 2 a state.
Right.
But the problem was nobody knew who I was still because the song wasn't on the album.
Right.
And so when we released the single, then obviously it shot through the roof. But I never, I'm looking at 2 gold records, a platinum record. Those were words that never entered my vocabulary when I was emceeing a comedy club in Dallas.
Right.
I didn't know you could make a living at this job.
Right. So how did the Travis Tritt attachment take place? Was that something that your management did, or you can't? That's behind the curtain. You can't reveal that.
No. It's an interesting story because initially I'd been out on tour with Joe Diffie. And I told Joe about something. He goes, yeah, I'll do it. He goes, I just got to check with my record label. And so Joe Diffie cut the original "Here's Your Sign." And then his president of his label said, we don't want you doing some little goofy song that's not going to go anywhere. So they took him off. And Travis was on Warner Brothers at the time. And I had met T. And we talked. And he said, yeah, I'll do it. And then, 10 weeks later, it's #1 for 8 weeks in a row. And Joe and I still laugh about that. He goes, every time I see that person who was president of the label, I go, nice call on the "Here's Your Sign."
Right.